All right. Class 10, Evan is on his way. So he was at Secure 360, speaking from 4 to 5. So he will be here at some point. So it's just me right now, and I don't have anybody helping out online, so this will be fun. All right. Almost done. If you have questions, give them to Evan. He was supposed to be presenting, not here yet. Everybody read chapters 1 through 7 so far. So we're doing well. It's 115 slides, and then when Evan gets here, what he talked about at the ISACA CACS conference, whatever that was. So I think what you're seeing, I think we saw it a little bit on Monday, starting to get a little bit easier. We're kind of duplicating, we're seeing these concepts that we talked about again over and over. So, all right, here we go. All right. During the course of a pen test, the testers discover signs of an active compromise on the new custom developed 3-tier web app. What is their best source of action? So I can get this out of the way. Yep, in the test and call operational IT support, maybe. There it goes. And you'd like to have the security firm test the new web app, but they've decided not to share the underlying source code. What type of test could be used to help determine the security of the custom web app?
It's a web app.
Yeah, and because they're not sharing the source code, we can't do static code or static testing, right? That's static code review. So white box testing, they're giving you all the information you need. So, yep, fuzzing. What type of pen test will result in the most efficient use of time and hourly consultant expense? Automated knowledge, full knowledge, partial knowledge, or zero knowledge? Full knowledge, right? Full knowledge, they're giving you everything they want you to test. Do these things, test this. Here's what you need to test. Partial knowledge, I'll tell you some things. Zero knowledge, that takes a lot of time because you have to go out and find and do the reconnaissance and understand what you're trying to test. So, yeah, full knowledge. All right. What term describes the holistic approach for determining the effectiveness of access control and has a broad scope? Security assessment, security audit, pen test, or vulnerability assessment? Yep. All right, what term describes the black box test or a black box testing method seeks to identify and test all unique combinations of software inputs? That is correct. Maybe. All right. What term describes a no-tech or low-tech method that uses the human mind to bypass security controls? Yeah, there you go. You guys are getting this. Everybody's gonna pass. All right. So when we left off, we were talking about incident management, incident response. So we will page 363 there for the new stuff. And we're going to start with this. This will be fun. So for those that are online that didn't hear, I have not looked at the slides at all because it was supposed to be Evan presenting tonight. So we'll see what happens until he gets here. All right. So detection or identification. What are the inputs into the incident response? Events or incidents? How are we identifying? How do we detect what's going on? Pretty easy, right? We can't protect what we don't know about. Comes back to access controls, logging, alerting, things like that. Then the response is your containment. So it's that step-by-step. We need to identify. Remember, I brought up that the slides that had the classification guides, right? So based on what the classification and severity are, that's going to dictate what those next steps are. That's that response piece. So as it comes in, we say it's affecting less than 10 people, non-critical data. Maybe that's a SEV3, low severity, low priority, right? Maybe a spam coming in. Depending on, well, that's going to say here's what we're doing. We're doing this set of steps. Ransomware affecting everyone, shutting down the systems. That's a critical SEV1, like drop everything. We got to go after it. But until you know and classify it, you can't really do anything about it. Determine, right, do you need a forensic response? Well, if so, what are the steps we need to do for that? That should be in your plan. And start your root cause analysis. Mitigation or eradication. So hopefully, again, once you get to this stage, you should already know what your root cause was. How did they get in? What's going on? Now, once we understand that, we can start to clear them out of the system. Yeah, the reporting, not really a step. It should happen throughout the entire process. But here's where you have that it really is that formal piece. All right, at this point, here is a report on what we found, where we're at, what's been done, what are the next steps. So it's more that formal portion of it. And then recovery is bringing things back into production. Again, restoring it, and always increase monitoring on any system that's been infected for a period of time afterwards. Remediation, fixing those larger, broader context, and then make sure you always do your lessons learned. So, in case you can't tell, really important going through this. Okay, so IDSs and IPSs. So we'll need to know the difference on those two. Intrusion detection, it's going to alert you to something. Intrusion prevention will actually take an action against that alert. It's a really important thing to know between the two systems. So true positives, right? So an example of a true positive, like, hey, this is an alert and we know it's correct. The Conficker worm is spreading on the trusted network, and the network intrusion detection system alerts on that. That would be considered a true positive. It is actually a positive hit. A true negative, so almost like the false accept, false reject rates, it's kind of similar, right? True negative, the user is surfing on the website, it's allowed, so the NIDS doesn't say anything, we're allowing that traffic. False positive is where they would go to a site that's maybe allowed, and your intrusion detection is going, hey, whoa, there's a problem here, right? Set. And then a false negative is when something bad is happening and it doesn't alert on it, it gets by it. Okay. That makes sense to everyone? Check online. Okay, no questions. So the three different types, pattern, protocol, or anomaly detection, we'll need to know the difference on these three. Pattern matching signatures, right? What's the pattern of behavior? The protocol behavior, so what protocols on the network is it doing? What is it using? Where is it going? And then the anomaly detection being, we've set a baseline and we're looking for anything out of the usual outside of that baseline. So there is some differences in those three. We'll just want to make sure you understand what those differences are on the exam. So you've got the security of information and event management. We talked about that. That's got multiple pieces on it: log aggregation, correlation, alerting. It's those multiple pieces of putting that those different things together under one product. Continuous monitoring, ongoing monitoring. Pretty easy. And then data loss prevention, so either network or host. Data loss prevention is going to be looking for keywords, phrases, medical record information, credit card information. Is it leaving the network? Alerting on it or blocking on it. So, and you can have that either on a network device or on a host-based device. So just make sure you understand what those are. There are some examples and some graphs. So you can see, the NIDS, the network intrusion detection, is sitting there behind the firewall. It's just, you've got the tap on the traffic between the firewall and the trusted network, where it's just saying, hey, what's going on? I'm just going to alert on this stuff. It's just another branch off. Intrusion prevention is going to physically sit in between and watch the traffic going through it and be able to cut it off or act on it. Okay, that makes sense? It's pretty straightforward. Again, these are typically the things that more people are used to, they've seen, they're doing on a more regular basis. All right, so continuous monitoring, so constantly assessing and reassessing as an ongoing process. Yep. We're just going to continuously, where are we at? Do we need to change it? Where are we at? Do we need to change it? So that certification accreditation we talked about, right? So I would certify a system is ready. The user would accredit it. If they accept it, that's accredited at that point. Well, continuous monitoring is kind of that next step. We're going to continuously go and watch for it. Yeah, data loss prevention. So detect or prevent data from leaving the organization. Like I said, typically you're looking at, health information, credit card information, bank account information, those types of things. So you have endpoint security. So we talked about NIDS, network intrusion detection, network intrusion prevention. Well, HID or HIPS is going to be host-based. So rather than it being a central one on the network, each host has their own. And then they typically report back to a central management. You have your antivirus, the application whitelisting, which is ideal, but we rarely see that. It's really, really hard to do. Usually businesses aren't willing to deal with the headache.
Point of sale is a good example because they're all the same. Running one point of sale application.
But do they block everything else on there, only allowing that executable?
Yep.
Potentially. I'll say this, yes, in theory, but actual execution is not always done that way. That's what I'm saying, right? So ideally, application whitelist, you say we're denying everything by default and only allowing specific applications that we've approved that have a certain versioning, whatever it might be. It's really rare to see that, but it could. Yeah, there are some places that do have it. You do, great. Removable media, so USB drives. How are we controlling those? Endpoint protection or endpoint security can control that. The actual disk encryption, and then privileged access, so who can actually access those endpoints. So we'll want to look through and just know those are all parts of rolling up into endpoint security. One of them by themselves might be referenced as it, but really when we say endpoint security, it's inclusive of all these different pieces. There you go. Whitelisting is absolutely the most effective. Because at that point, we don't care if there's a virus. Well, that's not true, but if the virus does get on that machine, it can't do anything. It's not whitelisted. We're denying everything by default. It has to be and match what we've approved. Makes it a lot more secure. Honeypots. So it is a system designed to attract attackers. Man, attack attractors. It's been a long day. So you put out a system that maybe has some known vulnerabilities that, right, you catch more flies with honey. That's the kind of the concept, but you have to be really careful about this. There's some legal gray area of, is it enticement or entrapment? Enticement being, well, they were going to do it anyway, we just made it easier, versus I wasn't going to do it, but you kind of put me in the position where I wasn't going to, how could I pass it up, right? So just be careful that honeypots are a kind of a legal gray area. You don't really see a lot of those anymore for that reason. What they are used for is for researching the attack methods. So you could put it out there and capture what's happening, see what the attackers are doing. Yeah, then low interaction, so they're simulated, or high interaction actual systems. Honey Net's same concept, except it's a network, not just a system out there. It's an entire network. Thought behind it, was, hey, let's put these kind of low-hanging fruit out there, these easy targets, and then the attackers go after those and not our actual sensitive stuff. And then hopefully you are monitoring that and seeing it and can cut off that behavior before it gets to your actual systems. All right, so asset management and configuration management. Ideally, beyond default system configuration. So we want to have a hardened standard, hardened baseline. So you can look at the CIS, Center for Internet Security has a lot of really good hardening standards. But really when you're looking at this, it is the concept, right? We're going to disable unnecessary services. Do we need DHCP client running on servers? I'm sorry, DHCP client. No, probably not. Servers are typically going to have a static IP. Let's turn it off, right? What services on there in Windows that come on by default are we disabling? What are we turning on that isn't turned on by default? Right? PowerShell logging is not on by default. Let's turn it on. Enabling your antivirus, the firewall, IDS, IPS, your security audit logs, right? If we leave our event logs in Windows on the defaults, they get overwritten before there's any use in there. Well, let's expand those out. Are we sending that off somewhere? Can we set specific services to have, only so certain groups can disable it? You typically would see that around like endpoint protection services. You lock it down so that only specific Active Directory groups that are really limited can disable those services, stop those services. It's just another step, to try and protect your system. There you go, CIS benchmarks. STIGs are another one that's from the DoD. They're really good. I think what we've found, or I've seen with the STIGs, is because they are military, they're very strict, not necessarily realistic for public sector, but they are really good guidance to look at. So if you're looking at some configuration management, some hardening standards, the CIS and the DoD's STIGs are actually really good reference material. So keep in mind, right, we can't secure what we don't know, asset management, right? I can't protect what I don't know I have. So I've got to have good asset management, period. First things first. And then you can't secure the things you can't control. So then that's your configuration, change control, access controls. This is easy, right? Security is easy. It's easy to say that. It's really hard to actually do it in production environments. Okay, so baselining. This is a capture of the point in time of the system. Where are they at? I'm going to take a baseline of what is running at these times. Maybe it could be things, services running, performance, CPU, memory, those types of things, hard drive usage. And then if we have an incident, we can see anomalies from that baseline. Well, it could be a potential indicator that something's going on. So baseline, it's capturing a point in time of the system. Where are we at right now? This is what I'm going to compare it against in the future. A continual baselining is important. So we can't just take a baseline and then 2 years later be using the same baseline. Right? What services have upgraded, what OS software, what's changed. So having a process for continuously updating it is important. All right, vulnerability management. So one thing to remember, vulnerability management and patch management are not the same thing. Patch management is part of vulnerability management. Vulnerability scanning, that's a good way. That's where we're going to discover configuration errors, open ports that we didn't know about, things like that, and missing patches. So we want to do a vulnerability scanning. Vulnerability management is managing those results. What did we find? What are our vulnerabilities? How are we going to address them? Either through configuration changes in our hardening standards or in our baselines or patching. But it allows you to prioritize and remediate what you find. Maybe. That's the same slide twice. All right. Cool. Oh, there we go. So that is a security assessment. You can see the vulnerabilities, what their severity is, where it was at, what host it was on, what port it was on, and then you would be able to take action based on that information. Here's the Nessus scan, shows just a couple of different vulnerability scanners. So that's a big part of it. Again, patch management is only part of vulnerability management. There is the vulnerability management process. So we have to identify and prioritize our assets. If I have a critical vulnerability on a end user workstation and a critical vulnerability on my server that hosts PHI, which one are you working on first?
Server.
Right, but you have to have that documented and prioritized. Do you know which servers have that sensitive information on it, right? So we need to know all that information. Identify the vulnerabilities. Scanning is typically how that's done. Remediate them, either, again, close down ports, shut things off, patch as appropriate, and then verify and measure your results. So you should use a separate tool that you, especially from your patch management, as you do for the verification. We can trust our patch manager to work. We want to verify it with a separate tool. So it's kind of a best practice on that. And that's behind it. I'm behind it again. I think he's doing this to me on purpose. So there's section 12.6 of the ISO 27702, technical vulnerability management. Really good reference on this. I could read it, but that'd be really boring for everybody. So, and at the end of the day, asset management is going to be the biggest thing. I can't protect what I don't know. How can I have a good vulnerability management program if I don't have a good asset management program? It's just not, you can't do it. So asset management, know what I've got. Vulnerability management is now scanning to see what's out there, identifying it, prioritizing it, remediating it, either through, again, turning off services, turning off, closing down ports, or actually applying patches. Wow, that's a lot of words. So it looks like that's out of a vulnerability management policy. So kind of or the process where what we're going to do once we identify a vulnerability. We're going to identify it. We're going to say, okay, this is a critical vulnerability on a medium severe or medium risk server, medium classification. We want to patch. We want to test those patches, right? We shouldn't push these out to production first. Want to test them, have a test process in place, and then once that's done, push them out based on the classification of the systems and the severity of the vulnerabilities identified. There you go. So 0-day vulnerability, 0-day exploits. Something to know on this is, let's see, I don't know if it says on there. A 0-day, literally, it just means there's no known patch for it yet. So it's not like, oh, it's fresh, it's only been out for a couple of days. Simply means there's no known patch. So what you're seeing now is that window for the patch being released, patch being made public is decreasing. So they'll release a patch and then they'll release the actual vulnerability. So you have to patch faster. We can't wait. Hey.
Hi. Hi.
Good.
There. Okay. How you doing?
I'm just making it up.
Yeah, 0 days. It's not even a day there. It's 0. It says it right there. Not 1 day, 0, none.
Right.
Mic drop.
All right. All right, so 0-day exploit. That means that there's known exploitation. So you could have the vulnerability, but no patch, but that doesn't mean it can be exploited yet. It hasn't been a proof of exploit. 0-day exploit means, all right, we've got the vulnerability and it's been proven we can exploit it. And there's no patching. All right, change management. So system that does not change will become less secure over time, right? We can't stand still. At the end of the day, if you don't continuously move forward, continuously improve your program, oh, I should get my power cord, then, you know, we're gonna fall behind. So we need to continuously change, update, keep track of what's going on with the system. So, yeah, not exact science. I've seen it done, I don't know, dozens and dozens of places, and I don't think any two places are the exact same. They're similar, but nobody does it exactly the same, which is awesome for continuity. Excuse me. No, yours doesn't do that. So how do we do change management? We're going to identify what needs to be changed. Right. All right. I need to apply this update for this of this software to this server. I would submit that change to change management board ideally, but just to in general, hey, I'm going to make these changes. Here's why. What's the risk associated with it? If we don't do this, here's our risk. If we do it, you know, potentially this could bring the server down for this amount of time. Should always test it. Whatever that your backup plan is, you should always have a backup plan for change management. It doesn't matter how simple it is. It could simply be, my favorite is with VMware is, well, it's take a snapshot, and if it doesn't work, I'm rolling it back. That's a valid backup plan, but you got to have it documented just so that everybody knows. Schedule it. Right? We don't want to impact and negatively impact the business by just changing things randomly. Doesn't tend to go well for your employment status. And then always make sure you notify impacted parties. So this goes back again to asset management. Do you know who the users are for that system? You need to let them know, let the business owner or the data owner know, system owner, whoever it is, hey, I'm applying this change during this window, it will be down. Big one, you know, websites that say we'll be down for maintenance. Well, we're notifying the impacted users. Implementing the change, so we're actually going to go and do it, and then reporting what happened. Now, the reporting isn't always success. Right? Nope, it failed at this step. We had to roll back. We're back functional where we were prior to the change window. That's an ideal world. Doesn't always work that way. Changes don't always, even rollback plans don't like it. But another really big important part with kind of proposing a change and having all that is, at what point do we say stop? Hey, I'm trying to do this update. It broke things. How long do I troubleshoot and try and fix it to get that change working before I got to roll back? So that's an important thing to know about that. And you need to track and audit those changes. So there you go. Change management. It's fun. Service level agreements or SLAs. Really important for external entities. Do you have an SLA with your internet provider, with your cloud hosting provider? What are those uptimes? Do you understand what they are? Anybody that is providing a critical service, you need to have a SLA with. What are the expectations out of that SLA? We will provide 5 nines uptime is kind of a common, you hear that a lot. 99% uptime is what, like they can be down for like 3.5 or 4 days a year or something. Something crazy.
You do the math.
So just understanding what that means. What are they promising you? What happens if they don't meet their agreements? So very important. Make sure that's in contracts prior to signing them and that you understand what you're signing. But for the exam. Again, know the difference or what those are. So backups, you'll need to know the different types of backups. Yay. Recoverability in the event of a failure. So if something goes down, we lose data, how do we recover that data? That's what backup is. Magnetic tape, still extremely common. I don't know if it'll ever really go away, not for a while at least. But yeah, you can have, virtual tape libraries, disk to disk, backup to the cloud. There's a bunch of different kinds. But what you'll need to know is the 3 different types of backups. So full, incremental, and differential. Full backups, that's everything on the drive. Now, remember when we were talking about forensics, it's only the active partitions, though. It's not clusters. It's not going to be anything that's deleted. Okay. So most costly, takes the longest amount of time and the most amount of space. So typically you would then couple that with one of the other 2 methods, but full backup is a replica of the allocated data on the hard drive. Incremental, make sure only archives the changes since the last backup of any kind. That's really key. Right. So incremental is going to be what's changed since my last backup. I don't care if it was a full, whatever kind it was, I'm just going to back up what's changed since then. So this will be the fastest, right? Because we're backing up the smallest amount each time. But if we have to recover, it's going to take more. Right? So we need the last full plus every incremental up to the point of recovery. Does that make sense? Okay. A differential is going to be any backup of any file since the last full backup. So that grows every day. So if you do a full backup every Saturday, right? Mondays may be fairly small. Tuesday it gets bigger till Friday could be a significant amount of data. The plus is if you do a restore, you only need the last differential backup. Backup or restore everything since your last full. So those are the big differences. You will definitely need to know the difference between those 2. We need to know these types of RAID. You will need to know the difference on these. But redundant array of inexpensive disks. RAIDs, and if you're not technical, you just have to memorize it. If you're technical, hopefully this is easy for you. But yeah, RAID 0 stripe set. We're just striping the data across 2 disks. Mirrored set, we're writing a copy to 2 disks. So you have the same thing on 2 different drives. RAID 3, byte level striping with parity. RAID 4, block level.
That means a dedicated parity drive.
And then, oh yeah, thank you.
No, yeah, I'm here to help. Thanks for taking over for me.
Huh? I know, I was waiting last second.
Damn it.
Pretty much.
So 3 and 4 have a dedicated parity drive.
Right. So you would have,
Used to rebuild.
you could have, a simple example, if you could have, 4 disks, the 4th disk is your parity, you have 3 disks is striping across with a parity drive.
Right. You lose the parity drive and you lose
You're toast.
the redundancy.
I guess we'll probably go through all these anyway. RAID 5, it's going to be block level striping with distributed parity, so it writes the parity across all the disks in the RAID array.
If you put 2 Ps in it, it's stripping. Just be careful.
That's probably not on the test though.
Oh.
No.
Right.
And then RAID 6, so block level striping with double distributed parity.
Also be careful when you abbreviate the word assessment or asset.
You can tell Evan's already done like 2 presentations today. It's a little punchy today.
Mm-hmm.
All right, mirroring, we will need to know the benefits and negatives for all of these because they will potentially give you what type of RAID is the slowest write time but fast read times, what is the most costly in terms of disk usage, right? So they'll
You
give
said
you,
DRISC.
I know, I spoke today too. I just didn't do 2.
I was listening.
Not
DRISC, disk.
Yeah. So mirroring full
See,
data
DRISC
redundancy, you write the same data to multiple drives.
If you see DRISC on the exam, probably the wrong answer.
Right, yeah, there you So write times are slower, it has to write it twice. Read times faster, it's only reading really from one disk. So, right, so it's not having to read across multiple disks, it's just reading right there off of one disk.
Yep, one hard disk.
Yes, it is most costly. You're gonna lose half your capacity of your array to that redundancy. So striping increases read and write performance, data across multiple hard drives. You can perform those in parallel, and then as opposed to serially.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah. And then parity is achieving that redundancy. So we don't have that whole lost drive. So hang on, let's see. Here is a good example of that. So RAID 0, we're striping. There's no parity on this one, but striping, right? So it writes A, B, C, D, E, F, G. It just writes the blocks of data across each of the drives. Typically, I would think you would see this in. I always used it for like on SQL servers, kind of the memory part, drive that it needs, right? I don't care if I lose the data. Yeah, the journal, yeah. I don't care if I lose the data. I just need really high performance and capacity, right? So let's just hammer it across there. There's no redundancy in this. If you need data recovery, that's not going to help you.
If anything, it's actually dangerous to do RAID 0, because if any one of the drives in the stripe set fails.
Right. Yeah. Depends on your usage.
Your chances get, well, yeah, if it's high, if I don't. Like
I just need high performance with no reliability or no guarantee of uptime.
The more drives you add to the RAID 0, the riskier it gets.
Yeah. With SSD, it's really nice though.
Oh yeah.
You can get some screaming performance, just saying.
Yeah.
So RAID 1, mirrored set. So we're doing the same thing. We're mirroring a duplicate to each disk. So your write is decreased because you're writing the same thing twice. Read can increase, it has the highest disk cost. RAID 2, I don't think this has ever been out there, but you need to know it. Hamming, and not what you do for like on the smoker.
Hamming?
Hamming.
I like hamming.
No, not used. Yeah, 14 or 39 hard disks, special hardware controller, prohibitive. It's
14 or 39.
I know, it's so random.
Who came up with that?
So if you see those weird numbers on there, it's going to be hamming, but RAID 2 I don't think is going to be on the test. I would be stunned if it was on the test. Yeah. If you get a question, you're like, that is not any of the RAIDs that we talked about. There you go.
RAID 2.
RAID 3 is your, again, stripe set with dedicated parity at the byte level. So data at a byte level across multiple drives. And then it has that dedicated parity disk. RAID 4, stripe set with dedicated parity at the block level. So 3 is byte level, 4 is block level, exact same behavior, just how they're doing the writing. RAID 5, this is probably the one most people are familiar with or seen the most of, although it's going away. You're seeing more RAID 6, RAID 10, things like that. You have a stripe set with dedicated parity. So block level striping, here's what that looks like. You write, 3 disks. So write block, parity, block, right? So it rotates through. And then if you lose one of those drives, you can put in a new drive and it can recover that data off of those parity disks or parity bits. Yeah, lower than mirrored set, hardware and software implementations. And if one of your drives or disks fails, you can recover from it. So there you go. That's what it is. RAID 6 stripe set with dual distributed parity. You can have 2 drive failures. So same concept as RAID 5. You're just now writing multiple, you're writing the same parity bit to multiple drives. So I don't think there's one in there. So you would have like one parity here and maybe one parity over here on a different, oh, it didn't click. Hang on. There we go. So you could have your parity bit here, and it would duplicate that to one of these other drives. So you would have dual copies of that parity bit, allowing you for.
So you won't have to increase to a fourth drive to do that, or?
I don't know what the minimum number of drives for RAID 6 is. Just 3, right?
I think it's just 3.
You lose capacity,
Oh, okay.
right? So that's where you're going to lose, because it's going to have to write double the amount of parity. So you do lose capacity. And then RAID 1 plus 0 RAID 10, it's a mirrored stripe set of mirrors. So we're striping and then mirroring that to a second set. So you have, the easiest one is you have 2 disks that are striping, and then it mirrors the stripe to a second set of disks. So you could lose 1 disk in either set. But if you lose disk 1 in both, you're out of luck. Yeah, there's a ton of different other types, but I think the ones we covered are going to be the ones that are the most common and what you would see on the exam. So you just make sure you understand those different RAID types and what they're about. And then, do you mind doing the next one? I'm gonna go grab my power supply real quick.
Sure. I have to use your computer.
Yeah, you can. I'll trust you. Watch him. So here, I'll even go over for you. There you go.
What are we talking about now? Redundant hardware. Yeah, you guys know what redundant hardware, it's the hardware, redundant. There's like multiple of them. Easy. No, where you'd see this is usually, anything that has the things that fail the most often are things of moving parts. So hard drives, SSDs don't fail nearly as much as hard drives used to fail, because hard drives had a spinning platter with a head that would have to seek and find data. So this is a lot less common. Power supplies, certainly, because they have the fan. That's a moving part. Typically those, can get gummed up with dust, things like that. Those are the most common redundant hardware. The other is redundant systems, and there's different ways to set up redundant systems. You've got active passive configurations where one will take all of the load, and then if it fails, and there's a heartbeat usually between the active and the passive, and then the active fails, it's no longer sending a heartbeat to the passive, so the passive then comes up. That'd be one configuration for a redundant system. Another configuration would be load balancing, right? Which is they're both active at the same time. It's just being balanced between 2 systems. Something external to that would appear as though it's communicating with just one system.
I'll work on your
It's an
presentation for you.
configuration. Yeah, that's a keynote.
Yeah.
Talking about, it's 7 facts about unicorns. That's when I talk. To the Minnesota State IT Center of Excellence. It's schools, it's post-secondary schools. 7 facts about unicorns. Actually, little secret, I have 8. The 8th one's a bonus.
Oh boy.
No, there really is.
All right, so we finished that one?
Yeah, redundant systems. So you understand redundant systems, right? Pretty self-explanatory. Redundant systems comes into play too. Usually you don't put redundant systems in place until you justify them with a business impact analysis or some kind of thing, which we'll get to in a little bit with disaster recovery planning, right? Let the business tell us how important these systems are. So if I had recovery time objective we'll get to a recovery time objective, but let's say my recovery time objective is minutes. Well, the only way you're going to achieve that is going to be a redundant system, right? Meaning the business can only tolerate that this thing is down for minutes. Well, then, make it redundant.
Yeah.
It's usually most people back their way into it, but that's the right way to do it.
Yeah, that's what we did for a bank, right? We can only miss out on 15 minutes of maybe a half hour of transactions. Yeah, all right, we had fully redundant systems in production and then a hot site with more redundant systems.
A lot of times you see this in firewalls too, because network
Yeah.
connectivity is so critical to a computer or to a company.
Yeah.
So they have active passive firewalls, plus it's cheap.
Yeah, that's cheap.
Database servers are a lot of times redundant systems.
It could have, redundant web web servers, things like that for e-commerce.
Mhm.
So there you go. All right. All right.
Ooh, disaster recovery plan. You just
Hey,
talked about this
I just
today.
talked about this. Just let you do it then. No.
No.
All right. So BCP, DRP, those are two different things. They used to be their own domain and got sucked into domain 7. So this is one of those realignments that they did. We need to make sure we understand and know the difference of these unique terms. We will talk about all of them here as we go. But a slide is a good kind of a study note for you as you move forward. All right, BCP, DRP, very distinct disciplines. It is very important to know the difference.
Y'all down with BCP? Yeah, you know me.
I got you.
You got it.
So business continuity
Take your
planning.
test, you'll be like, damn it.
I know. Business continuity planning, that's the business. It is how is the business going to continue before it happens? What's the plan? During and then after the event. BCP is the business as a whole, and it should be a long-term strategy. So, owner asker's calling me.
We have an incident.
I know, probably. We had an incident with one of the sales guys. Got a call from a client while we were at Secure 360. Anyway, users.
What was it?
User did something they weren't supposed to.
That
People
never
in.
happens.
Right? Shocking. All right. So business continuity plan. We need to make sure you have all these things, right? So what are your people doing? All your vital records, insurance information, you need to have a list of all your business processes, all your systems. How are we going to, come back up? So when you look at, disaster recovery, it's more focused on the IT side of it. It's a subset. It's usually called from the business continuity plan, and you pull a lot of that information out of your business continuity plan. So disaster recovery, tactical IT responses. If the system goes down, here's what we do to recover it. The business continuity plan says, here's where the users go to actually access the system. Here's our failover site. Here's where we're going to go to those for the actual users. DR site, you need to know, for the DRP, you need to know, okay, where are they going? How are we going to get network connectivity to it? How are we going to bring them up and get them access? But the business continuity plan is going to dictate a lot of that information. The immediate response to disasters and does not focus on long-term business impact. It is solely how do we get things up and in the time that the business has dictated and said we need to hit these SLAs, we need to be up in a certain amount of time. How do we do that?
Says.
So then is it safe to say you'd have your DR plan incorporated into your business continuity plan?
Yeah, so your business continuity plan, your DR plan is typically called out of your business continuity plan if it's done correctly. In theory, it's my favorite qualifier. Ideally, what would happen is your business continuity plan is in place first. It identifies a huge amount of what's in your disaster recovery plan. So when you go to do your disaster recovery plan, you're already they've already done their business impact analysis. They've already identified critical systems. They've identified the people responsible for it, all those things. And then the DR plan is simply, I need to get that system up in this amount of time. Here's what I have to do and where I'm doing it at.
Yeah, typically the ownership of the plans is different too. Like the disaster recovery plan, typically the CIO
It's an IT,
owns that plan. So he can commission and authorize and budget and get those things done. The business continuity plan, however, is a business plan. It's owned by the business. So, executive management, starting with like the CEO.
CEO or CFO, I've seen run it.
And usually the business units themselves have their own plans that kind of feed into that business continuity plan. But because a lot of times IT or information security will be asked to create a BCP. No, don't do that. If the business commissions it and signs off on it, then we'll participate, but usually we don't want to own that plan. just too far reaching and large.
There you go.
I just got asked to do that like last quarter for
We
the
get,
flight center.
yeah, we get that done all the time where they'll ask for, it's IT asking for help with their BCP and DRP. And it's, well,
Different.
we can help you, but you, again, yeah, you shouldn't be the ones driving this. You can help them. There's a lot of good things that IT can help with around it, but there you go. So relationship business continuity is an umbrella that includes a lot, right? So that's where that DR plan falls in. They will have a lot of similarities, right? So that's why from an IT perspective, I always prefer to have the business continuity plan done first, because then my framework is already set for the DR plan. I already know who the critical people are, who do I need to contact, what am I working to recover, what are my timelines to recover it. I don't have to put all that together. I just have to pull it out of the BCP and then put the actual technical stats around, here's how we're going to do it. Yeah, so different scopes intertwined, subset of DR is a subset of BCP. 834 NIST talks about what that looks like. So there you go.
That's like one of my favorite diagrams ever for continuity planning.
Yep. So your BCP should have, or ideally would have, all of those different, call these different things.
Separate integrated plans, yeah.
Incident response, contingency DR.
Yeah, we see that
Business
happen a lot.
recovery.
Where incident response plans aren't tied into disaster recovery plans. And going back to change control, a disaster recovery plan should be integrated with change control, right? Because certain changes that you're making to the environment require an update to the plan. So if you installed a new application on a critical server or you introduced a new server, you know, so that we see that missing a lot too, because disaster recovery plans will soon become outdated if you don't keep them up.
Yeah.
Right? So in your change control process, having that loop into disaster recovery planning is really important.
And incident response plan.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Diagramming,
point.
all those things. So in really mature change control processes, you'll see those things in it. There'll be those tie-ins between the two.
If it's most places, it's one group that does everything anyway.
Yeah, or their change control system is just their ticketing
Yeah.
system.
All right. So classifications of disaster, we need to know these. Natural disasters, earthquakes, fires, lightning strikes, floods, hurricanes, tornadoes, all those things. Human, it's really important. Most common source of disasters is human. So remember that for the test. You know, so you have intentional, unintentional, two different types. Intentional being hacking, malware, those types of things. Unintentional is, I know this is going to be a surprise, but users mess up. Right. They've deleted something. They accidentally, you know, who was I talking?
Oh, people drop tables before in databases. I mean,
yeah,
just you name it. There's all kinds of weird things.
little Bobby tables.
Yep.
Anyway,
Which they should never have the ability to do anyway. I mean, so that there's bigger issues there.
but again, just make sure you understand it. When you see it, what's the biggest type of disaster? Human. Whether it's intentional or unintentional, that's the biggest source. And then environmental, so you know, the power issues, system failures, flaws in the software. So we'll just need to know, you need to know the difference in those three. And again, test tip, human is the biggest cause.
Yeah, ransomware would fit in, you know, human,
Yeah.
intentional. And that's a good example too of a crossover between your incident response plan and your disaster recovery plan, because it'll probably start with an incident response. And then, oh crap, you know, it hit critical servers and whatever.
Yeah.
And then now the DR gets activated.
Yeah, I had a good question. I can't talk about it here, but I'll tell you about it afterwards.
Okay, probably not
At
your
the
BCP.
Secure 3.
This could be your BCP too, but probably not that far.
No. So there you go. Know those differences. There you go. There's kind of a high level understanding, maybe a little cheat sheet for you to help you remember what the different types are.
Yeah.
I don't think you'll need to know the difference between intentional and unintentional. but the big, if it's an error or an omission, it's unintentional. So, all right. Well, there you go. Errors and omissions. That's what I said. I hadn't looked at this at all, so this is a surprise to me.
Me neither.
So errors and omissions, the most common source, inadvertently caused by by humans. Data entry, that's a big one. That'd be interesting. So would a user clicking on a link be an unintentional or an intentional?
Probably unintentional.
But then
Because
the aftermath would be intentional.
yeah, from the attacker's perspective. Yeah.
So anyway, that won't be on the test, but natural disasters we talked about. Low likelihood, we need to know that. So that's part of the business impact analysis, is understanding what the impact and the likelihood are, right? It's our risk assessment piece. So there you go. This is what Minnetonka looks like from a natural disaster likelihood. So slightly above average for tornadoes.
And this is just USA.com. This is free.
Yeah.
So you go to USA.com and it's hard. It's actually harder than I thought to find good natural disaster threat data. FEMA has some stuff, but it's usually dated and, some of you have to pay for, but USA.com is a cheap, it's free. It's good enough.
Geological Society has good stuff too.
Do they? Is it hard to find though? Okay. So Geological Society? Okay, good. Excellent.
Electric power problems, that's pretty self-explanatory. Much more common to have power outages than have a tornado. You can handle this with UPS or generators.
It's crazy how different parts of the country too are so much different.
In terms of?
Yeah, like Manhattan, New York City, power goes off like all the time.
Brownouts and.
Yeah, whereas like here, the power is pretty high quality.
Yeah.
It's really rare for power to go out in Minnetonka.
Summertime.
Probably all the rich folk.
AC.
Yeah, but you still don't see a lot of, no, like if you go, good point, like if you go into New York, it's really bad.
I went down one time, we were doing an assessment. I was doing an assessment of one of the big three, Experian has an office in Manhattan, has a data center in Manhattan. And so we were doing an assessment, a physical assessment, and part of it was trying to figure out where fiber runs were going. So the city, they pull a lot of weight, I guess. The city brought us under the street to see the fiber runs. And it was like a rat's nest. It was like this beard. I mean, it was like, what the hell, how can you tell what goes where? It's nuts. Nothing is like marked. So it's not a surprise that power sucks so bad there.
And it's really old too.
It's really old.
So, temperature, humidity failures. So we need to understand if we have a power failure, do we have backups for humidity and AC, especially around, in a server room.
I had a buddy of mine just like last month ago. He's the CIO. He left on his own accord, but he was the CIO of a very large company, and their HVAC units went out, and they didn't realize they didn't have redundancy. They didn't realize that, a number of things come to light when shit hits the fan, and everything. I mean, the heat went from like 67 to like 92 in like an hour.
Yeah.
I mean, it got out of hand quick, and so they had to shut everything down.
Yeah, been there. We keep the portable units. Then you open the door and have a fan blowing the cooler air from outside in, and the portable units, and you're just bare bones systems hoping for the best.
This was really bad too when they had those blade servers.
Oh yeah.
You could not keep those damn things cold.
No.
Remember the blade servers?
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen one of those in a long time.
No. Well, no, I guess not.
tried everything to keep those things cool in the data center, cowling, those dedicated cooling systems just for those systems. They still couldn't keep them cool.
Yeah, I'm never a fan of those.
Mhm.
So mean time between failures will decrease if temperature is high or well, low, if it's outside of their recommended range. High humidity, corrosion, low humidity, static electricity, same thing. So
Have you ever looked up mean time between failures on electrical components?
not in a long time.
Yeah, I don't think I ever actually have, but they say that they're available in like the engineering or manuals. They have mean time between failures on things, but I've never actually looked them up before. It'd be interesting.
We did for some critical systems
Yeah.
way back, but I was more because I was curious, not
Yeah,
because
I'm
there was a
kind of
business
curious. I'm kind
requirement.
of curious now, but I'm enthralled by the class right now.
All right, so warfare, terrorism, and sabotage are considered human intentional threats. Cyber warfare is in there. Yeah, I think those are pretty self-explanatory on that one. There's an example there, the Aurora attacks, which was found in a sample of the malware used in the attacks.
2010.
2000, that's a long time ago.
Just like yesterday.
Traced to computers at 2 educational institutions in China. Surprising. Hasn't changed a whole lot in the last 9 years.
We can trust the Chinese.
All right, so financially motivated attackers, right? They're the ones going after cardholder data, trying to get the gift card scams that are going around. They're trying to get money. That's what they're about. Another big one to understand: personnel shortages. If we don't have enough staff to actually run things, that's a disruption. So.
Especially now. Right now we have an unemployment rate in the state of Minnesota. There's a certain percentage of, I just heard this on the way in, there's a certain percentage of people in any population who are just unemployable. And it's usually like 2-3%. Minnesota is at that level right now. So there's no more talent. They can't get people to fill jobs, supposedly. So, you talk about personnel shortages in a really good economy like this, I think it probably even makes it harder to find good talent.
It's running lean.
It is running lean. So now they're thinking about,
If anybody leaves, you're out of luck.
well, trying to get, you need more people, right? So maybe we loosen the immigration policy. Well, that's such a politically charged thing right now.
And plus, nobody wants to move up here. It's
If
cold in the winter.
you need people.
Right.
Replace people with those kiosks, I guess, at McDonald's or something.
There you go.
You guys use those?
No,
They look very,
although that hack was hilarious.
Yeah.
I don't know how do you guys see that one? It's like if you order like 47 cheeseburgers without pickle, without cheese, like you have to uncheck it and then you do like these 5 steps, your order's free.
Yeah.
At the kiosk. It's like really, it's convoluted. Yeah, he'll look it up. All right, so personnel shortages. That is kind of the list of over the last, from 2010 to 2016, what percentage of risk or of what was the motive over time. So financial kind of came down a little bit, espionage went way up, and everything else, fruit. I don't know, what is FIG? What's
Fig what?
Threat motivator.
Foreign intelligence gathering, I think.
There you go. There you go.
Sounded good.
I thought it was the little
I made it up, totally.
cookies.
Could be cookies.
Oh, right, Newton's. All right.
Yeah.
It's been a long day. All right.
That graphic came from the DBIR, so the Verizon data breach investigations report. So they have if you wanted to know what they are, it's in there somewhere.
All right. So personnel shortages, we will need to know these. Pandemics and disease. So if there's a flu, they're all out sick. That is a negative business impact. And you will need to know this for the exam. So if it's the flu is typically the biggest one. Do you plan for it? How are you accounting for that in your BCP? Strike, so refuse to go to work for better conditions or better pay or whatever it may be. Usually, again, they're planned in advance, giving the organization time to, it's usually a threat to get there, but you'll hear about where they actually go on strike and don't go into work. And then availability. So, again, how many times a year IT is running lean, right? We run bare bones staff. Well, if one of those people leaves, you're already taking in overworked staff, and then it causes a big issue.
So the hack was you order 10 hamburgers, remove the meat patties from the 10 hamburgers, and then order 1 hamburger, and then you get 10 buns and 1 burger for free. Because if you order the 10 burgers for $1 each, and then you take off the meat patties, they actually give you a $1.10 credit for no meat. So the 10 would add up to $1, which would get you that free burger.
I thought there was another one
And you'd
too.
also get the 10,
There's another one.
Yeah.
Is that
That's this one.
on the
Have you ordered
kiosk?
11 where they get cheese on it?
I don't know. But that's the one they have on this YouTube video is they ordered 10 burgers for $1 each, so that was $10, and then they removed the patties, which gave them $11 refund, and then with the extra $1 they bought a burger, so net zero.
Anyway, all right. How do you figure that out? Anyway, communications failures. So call center, IP telephony. So if our network is down, that's a big issue. The telecom being inadvertently cut by someone. I know personally been there where I was told by our MSP we had redundant circuits between our data centers.
But they run down the same side of the street.
No, they had one central point where kind of the triangle, but they had one point where they had to meet and diverge, and it was like on the side of the highway, and they were mowing and hit it and took down both links at one. Like, come on.
I've had fiber cuts before where they ran them both on the same side of the street. It was like, well, who the hell does that? Because you do this to protect against backhoe.
Yeah.
Anyway, I saw one guy had to sit on his backhoe. He cut our fiber, but he also cut electric.
Oh, so he couldn't move.
No, so he had to sit there for like, I don't know how long it took. It was NSP at the time. How long it took NSP to get out there. NSP used to be, Excel used to be NSP. That was funny because we were giving him shit. What are you gonna do? Huh? Come at me, bro. No, don't. Just kidding.
All right. There's a story about one of the impacts on communication out of Katrina. So, major issue with Quest, and it dropped. It was a nightmare across the board.
Yeah.
All right. DR process. So always remember, again, DR, business continuity, incident response. It doesn't matter. Personnel safety is always going to be the right answer. If you see that on the test, immediately that's your answer, go. So anyway, go back. So what is it? How are we going to respond to it? How are we going to activate the team? How are we going to communicate if our email maybe is your primary mode of communication? If email's down, how are we communicating? Having all that thought out in advance is really important.
And thinking through, because we've had this in communication failures too before, where internet's down, but if it's a widespread enough failure, the cell phone channels get clogged too, so I can't use cell phones either. So then how am I going to connect? How am I going to communicate with people? And sometimes you have to, you have a central meeting location where if we don't talk to each other within X number of minutes, meet here, then you have to do face-to-face communication. Sometimes it gets that bad, putting that in your plan is a good idea.
Yeah.
Because it sucks when you're in the middle of a disaster and you're like, I don't know who's here, where you feel really isolated.
Yeah. That's not a good feeling. So going back real quick. So the first bullet point, there's disagreements around exactly the names or the numbers, but again, this is out of the book and for the exam. So what you see here may not be matching up what you've seen in the actual world, but it's what you need to know for the exam. So responding, right? What are we going to do? That initial assessment of what does this qualify as a disaster? Do we have to initiate and activate the team? So the faster you can do that and more accurately you can do that, the more effective your team will be, or your plan will be. And again, that fourth bullet point, assessing facility safety for continued personnel usage. That is really important. I remember seeing questions or seeing things, around preparing for a truck, right, or a chemical spill or a train accident. Well, it didn't physically damage the building, but there may have been chemicals spilled. We have to take personnel safety into account. That's your top answer. We have to evacuate. You have to bake all those things into place. But yeah, we need to know and activate our team. Communication around it, timely status updates, set a standard for status updates. The worst part of a disaster is when you have like the business unit owner or whoever coming in asking every 15 minutes what's going on, what's the update, what's going on, because that's not disruptive at all. Often out of band, you have to come figure out how are we going to communicate this, set those expectations up front. I will give you an update every hour. And then external communications, how are we going to communicate to the public? Is there a website down? How do we communicate this? The news shows up. How are we going to talk about it? Understanding those.
So it's public, not public.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes, I double checked to look and see, and it doesn't even say that. It says communications. Assessing it. So once we've activated the team, started our communication, now is when we do our deep dive. Where exactly are we at? We've identified this is down. Now, why is it down? What's going on? It's that next step. And then understanding what do we have to do to meet and satisfy it and not hit that maximum tolerable downtime, right? Mean time between failure, we talked about, right? From the time it's in place to the time it fails, maximum tolerable downtime. How long can this be down from a business perspective? 4 hours, 8 hours, 2 weeks. Business needs to tell you that, but we need to know for the DR plan what that is so that we can hopefully meet it. Out of that, are we doing it? Are we going to restore on site, or are we failing over to a secondary site as part of this assessment piece? So reconstitution is recovering that business operation, either primary or secondary. One thing to remember is if you are at a secondary site, the same safety and security controls have to be in place. Just because we're at a secondary site doesn't mean that the classification and of the data or the systems has changed. So if we have sensitive information, PHI, we can't just suddenly have like the doors are open and anybody can access it because we're at a secondary site. And then salvage team begins recovery at the primary facility. So reconstitution is coming back up, recovery being getting the original site back functioning. So high level BCPDR, I don't think you'll necessarily need to know it. It helps you understand the concept. So initiate it, always getting management buy-in. That's going to always be the most important step. And I think that was on one of those quizzes we had. What's the reason this failed? Well, we didn't get management buy-in from the start. Scoping it, understanding what the actual scope is. Really important for a disaster recovery plan. Business continuity is as well. Doing your impact analysis. What are our critical systems? How long can we afford for them to be down? How much data can we afford to lose? How long can they be unavailable? So identifying your preventative controls, redundancy, right? Redundant systems, redundant hardware, then actually designing the plan and developing it, writing it out, and then implementing it, training people on it. That's a really important piece. If we have a plan but nobody knows what they're supposed to do, we don't really have a plan. And then testing it to make sure it actually works. Maintenance being ongoing around change control, around annual updates, annual testing, whatever it may be. All right. See, I just talked through these. So project initiation. This is why I should have looked at these before I started.
No.
It's more fun this way.
Mhm.
Develop the contingency planning policy statement. So
Nobody does that.
Yeah.
Nobody does that. Nobody does any of
everybody
this,
does
ever.
this. No.
Just kidding.
You'll have a planning a policy statement. Why are we doing this? Who has authority to actually do it? Who is granting that authority?
Have you guys ever done a BIA before? Business impact analysis? I think the easiest way I've done it is create a questionnaire, for business unit heads or whoever. Because this also marries up with, you remember when we talked about data classification? You got data owners, system owners, application owners, whatever you've assigned those assets to, those are the people that need to answer these questions about the business impact analysis.
Yeah.
Normally, in every one of them thinks that their stuff is more important than anybody else's stuff. So you have to have a sanity check. That's the way I've done it before. So create a questionnaire. These are the things that I need to know in order to get a good, maximum tolerable downtime. Give me this stuff. And then you sanity check it. Like,
I think
Jane thinks it's, the internet's worth that much, come on. You go talk and say, no.
No,
You know what I mean? So
the
there's
best part
coaching.
of that is when you go back and get all the business units in a room and say, all right, all three of you said, and then watch them fight with each other.
Take all the BIA questionnaires. All right, fight. I'll be back in 3 hours.
Yeah. You all said you're all the top priority.
Yeah, I've never done it that way. That sounds cool though. I would try.
It's fun. So do your business impact analysis, identify preventative, right? What can we do to help minimize the outage before it happens or minimize disruption when it happens? Develop your recovery strategies. How do we get back up? And that's a little bit more around technical at that point. Your contingency plan. So what are the actual procedures around recovery? Testing, training, talk to that, and then maintenance, it's got to be a living document. It can't just be, we've done it and
Change control.
it sits there.
That's where you tie it in, right? Absolutely. And then another thing with it all makes logical sense, doesn't it? Right, I wouldn't define my recovery strategy. That's also where you'd find out like those things like after the business impact analysis that I can only have this much downtime on certain systems. That also justifies budget because you might have to get some redundant systems. You might have to invest it. I think we're going to get to hot site, warm site, redundant sites. That business impact analysis is such a good budget driver because it's the business that told us, not us telling the business.
Well, and the best part is you get that impact analysis from an IT perspective, and then you go, okay, here's what it's going to cost to actually do that. And then they come back and go, well, here's what I really meant.
That is true. That's another good sanity checkpoint.
That's fun. I like doing that. That was always fun. Yeah. You need 15 minutes of downtime and that's it with no lost data. Okay. $400,000. No, what I meant was like 4 hours of downtime.
How much is that going to cost?
Yeah, that's exactly.
What?
I think that was pretty.
Yeah.
No, it's critical, but
What can I get for 80,000?
that is exactly what's happened.
Like, well, I can give you 2 weeks. Okay.
Yep. So management support critical, right? That's really, really important. They must agree to any plan. You need to have some sort of a sponsor for the plan, right? That's going to get your buy-in. COO, CEO, C-levels. They need to speak for the organization when dealing with outside media. So this is somebody who can speak on behalf of the organization and actually have the ability to commit resources to that plan. You need to identify a project manager. So who is going to be responsible for maintaining and testing the plan. So you need to have somebody who is going to be, again, a good leader, good manager. If the plan gets called, they need to be able to run that, right? Identify, manage multiple people in a very chaotic situation. Yeah, the point of contact for everybody, organized, not necessarily a very technical person, just a good leader and understands enough to say, all right, here's who I need to contact, here's who I should be reaching out to.
This email I got from my mother.
Oh boy. I'm gonna plow through.
Yeah, you have to read it.
Oh boy. Continuity planning project team. So if something happens, these are the people that are going to be responsible for doing something during the plan. Right? So as the business units, the stakeholders for the different business units, the data owners, the actual recovery team and response team, anybody that has a role in recovery should be on that planning project team. All right, scope it. What are we covering, right? So from a DR perspective, this is the specific to the data center at FRSecure headquarters around these systems. We're not looking at a DR for our cloud. That's a different thing, or whatever it might be. You might have a different DR plan for different subsidiaries or different business units, right? So what is the specific scope? What are we talking about here? Yeah, so you get your plan in place. Here's what we're gonna scope. You might get the buy-in from C-level, then you move forward. So yeah, if-then statements. If this happens, then this happens. If this happens, then this happens. So yeah, if there's a hurricane, it's plan H, do this. If it's a tornado, it's plan T, do this. If it's malware, everyone cry in the corner.
Have to update your resume too.
Yeah.
I've walked into incident responses before, and that was the first thing I said. All right, what's the plan? And they're like, oh, we don't have a plan. All right, first thing in our plan is to update resumes.
Yeah.
Some
They
of
think
them-
they're like, ha 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 ha.
Some of them laugh and some of them don't.
Yeah. So there you go. Draft documents, what are we gonna do? We're gonna do some tabletops. We're gonna start understanding, do we have everything covered? It's really setting out that kind of that rough outline of the plan.
I don't know if I put testing in here.
Well, we talked about it.
You did talk about different tests?
I don't
It's coming.
know.
We should, okay, yeah, because
Definitely,
coming.
tabletop and
you got walkthrough, tabletop, partial
It's
fail
only
alert,
5 pages.
full
well, I don't know
interruption.
if you put it on the slide deck.
test. I don't, well, if we didn't, we'll
We'll
talk about it,
Okay.
if you don't mind me.
All right. Executive management has to ensure the following support: initiate the plan, final approval of the plan, and then they need to be able to show, right, at the end of the day, they've done their due diligence. Who's going to be held accountable? C-level. So that is why they are ensuring support. Critical state. Yeah, what is critical? It really comes down to, I think, a lot of times with that business impact analysis. What are our critical systems? What are we really focused on?
You realize where you've got so many documentation gaps too, because systems require a network and a network require, you know what I mean? You think of, and that's part of the critical state is figuring out, okay, well, just having the server isn't going to do me any good if I can't get
that's a good
people to the server. So your network diagrams become, you can tell a company that's had a disaster before and a company that hasn't. Company that has it's had a disaster before, you ask for network diagrams, you're like, damn, those are nice network diagrams. Companies that have never had one,
I have to show you what I've done.
you see this like, that's not a diagram. That's a napkin.
And going to the testing and why that's so important, right? When we were doing a test, it was an application that had, it was a database and a client application, two different servers that were separate. It wasn't like integrated into AD. The servers were on the domain, but the applications themselves had unique logins. So the first time we tested it, we're like, all right, brought them up and nothing worked. Like, what is going on? They could log into the application server because it had some of that stuff, but they couldn't access anything, even though we could hit it over the ports. It had to have the AD controller up for the trust to work for, like, I don't know, however their application worked.
I've seen recoveries too, where they lost one of the systems where they stored the recovery, the decryption key, the
Ooh.
secret key for the backup was one of the systems that they needed to restore.
Yeah,
because
that's
it was down.
Yeah.
What are you
Their own
gonna do?
ransomware.
Yeah, so be careful, make sure that you put your, keys like
Multiple.
that in different locations, so
But
it happens.
that's figuring out that critical state, right? Anyway. So there you go.
Some kind of fuzzy screenshot I took.
Gives you an idea of what the system is, what the users are, what's affected, and what the impact is. Boom. Business impact analysis. Well, how is a disruption to an IT system going to impact the business? There you go. It's just identifying and prioritizing what the impact is for the different systems. No.
Okay.
That's
No,
killing me.
Too much work.
It enables, Evan's punchy. Enables BCP-DR project manager to understand what they're working with here. How do we prioritize? How do we put this
We're all
plan
adults
together?
here, right? We're all adults here.
Yeah, well, we don't know about online.
They're all adults too.
But it's on YouTube.
It's on YouTube? Well,
Yeah.
yeah, but I've been in trouble before. So what I asked him is an analysis the same as an anal dialysis? And he said it's not, so
As far as I know.
I was just curious.
I'm gonna get yelled at for not stopping him.
No. Nobody
I'm
can
just
stop
gonna yell
me.
at him, right?
Yeah.
All right, so BIA up in the corner, 2 processes. We have to identify all our critical assets and then understand and do the risk assessment against those processes or those assets. So we can't do this without asset management. All ties back. Yeah, determine maximum tolerable downtime. That's a big one. What is the maximum amount of time that system, that process, whatever it is that is specifically, the IT focus, what can it be down for? How long? That's our target to get it back up.
Yeah, the 2 biggest things are this and the recovery point objective.
Yeah, how much data can we lose? Yeah, information to improve business processes. A lot of times, the first time you do a business impact analysis with a company, they go in with, oh, well, here's what we know, and come out with, that's not at all what we expected. And it's really fun to kind of watch that happen. Like, oh yeah, we know for sure, this is our most important thing.
Yeah, it's weird.
So how do we identify our critical assets? You do your BIA, critical state asset list, every IT system within the organization. You have to do it for everything. And then once you have that full list, that's when you go back and the business can deem critical, not critical. But if we don't have a full list of assets, we can't do a full business impact analysis. And then do the risk assessment. So likelihood and severity and all those things. There you go. What's the risk assessment?
Can you get my fuzzy screenshots? I can't read that.
Oh, there you go. Hey, look, there's words about it. Total time a system can be inoperable before an organization is severely impacted. That's the key word there. You'll need to know that. They'll give you that they'll have that sentence and then a list of multiple different options of what does this define, or this is the definition of what. It has those 2 metrics, recovery time objective and work recovery time. Are we gonna talk through those? I don't know.
Work recovery time isn't like a big one anyway.
No, yeah, the recovery time objective is a big one, and then that is a part of it. You'll need to know, I think you'll probably need, I memorized all the formulas,
Four more slides and you go over.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Oh, you already in the slides?
They sent them out earlier, Brandon did.
Oh, when do you guys get the slides?
About 5 o'clock,
Oh, only like an hour before class.
sometimes between 4:30 and 5. Sometimes you get some out at 4.
So we're not the time crunch on that. I got these two
I
here
know.
this morning at like 6. Didn't I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. All right. Alternate terms, and, just know maximum tolerable downtime, maximum allowable outage, acceptable outage. Those all mean the
Basically
same things.
Yeah.
But you need to know that. Multiple things that mean the same. Yay.
More metrics.
Yeah, so failure recovery, how frequently the systems fail, how long it can be down, and maximum time to recover from failure. So recovery point objective. Oh, we're gonna talk about those. I'll skip through those.
Are we?
Yes, we are. I can see the little preview. Recovery point, the amount of data loss that's acceptable. So recovery point is 4 hours. We could lose 4 hours of data before it's a significant impact to the organization. We can lose 15 minutes, whatever it is. I think real world on this one, when I took over a place, they were doing backups nightly. And we're under the impression it was every 12 hours with a recovery point objective of 8 hours. So when we figured out and kind of went in there, I was like, so how, they came up with, oh yeah, we can lose like maybe a day's worth of data, and that's like 8 hours of work, but it was running around the clock. Well, it would back up at 10 p.m. every night.
So you'd miss your RPO.
Guess what? I got bad news for you. Just an example there on the second bullet point. So maximum amount of work data or work loss for a given process. Right. So from healthcare, that's gonna be a lot shorter. Banking, really short. And banking, we had it down to under 5 minutes.
Yeah, a lot of transactional.
Yeah,
places.
any
You
of
have to
those
keep
types
them
of
really
things.
Quick,
You can't,
short.
because then you gotta figure when you have a recovery point, we can only be down for a half hour. Well, even if I can recover 15 minutes ago, then it takes an hour and a half to actually go through and verify there's no duplication around medical records, financial records, things like that. So you gotta keep all those things in mind. Super exciting. I actually like this stuff.
Well, your strategy, I mean, because some databases, it's basically 0.
Mm-hmm.
So they've got, transaction logs. So
Yep.
things are,
We would ship
before they're
those.
committed to the database, they're written to the transaction log. So even, what I mean?
Yeah.
It's crazy, but that would all be part of your strategy.
As long as you're logging.
Well, transaction
Well,
logs in your SQL server or whatever your database server is.
Yeah.
You
Ideally, if you're at
you
that
have it set
level,
up.
you probably are doing pretty good. There's not a lot of places that have that level that I've seen. So recovery time, maximum time allowed to recover the IT system or the business system. All right, we can lose 15 minutes of data and we can be down. I need it back up in 1 hour. Recovery time is that 1 hour to recover to where we're at. System recovery, work recovery, the amount of time required to configure and recover it. So if I can be down for an hour, and then that ties into the acceptance testing and bringing it back up and all the work that goes into it. You just need to know those things. Mean time between failure, how long it'll run before it fails. So you'll see they'll do the testing, they'll do the extrapolation where they run, a large quantity of their device for a certain period of time around the clock. How many failures do they get? Okay, well, we ran 1 failure out of 33,000 hours of functioning time. Well, that's going to be however many years.
It's cool stuff, but like I said, I'm never.
You don't really, you don't see it a lot. I did look at it for that very short period of time, right? We had to have basically no loss.
Right.
So you do look at those types of things, but not very often.
Who does that? It's like, What does United Laboratories do, these UL people?
Yeah.
Do they do any of this stuff, do you think?
I think mostly it's on the vendors. That's where I found it. I don't know
Vendors
how
do
they
their own
came it.
testing.
Yeah.
I think they're more focused on safety.
Is that what UL does? Okay.
Mean time to repair, how long it's going to take to recover a failed system. So we need to know, here's how long it's going to take us to bring this back up. Minimum operating requirements. So you might have
How much power? How
Yeah.
much heat? Yeah.
network bandwidth, with all those types of things. What is the absolute minimum to bring our systems back up to a functioning state?
It sucks when you try to bring up servers and you don't have enough power.
Yeah.
You keep blowing circuits when you're bringing servers up.
Yeah, or you
That'd be
keep
an
overloading
MMR
the
failure.
AC and it's too hot and you can't run them.
Bacon,
I know.
bacon.
Identify your preventative controls. So again, what can we do to minimize the impact? Redundant systems, redundant hardware, all those types of things. And then what's our recovery strategy? Now we know how long we can afford to be down. What's our recovery point objective? What's our recovery time objective? Once we get all those things in place, now we can put together the strategy to satisfy all those things. So, oh, there we go. We do talk about it.
Well, I think I kind of just, I'm helping. I think I screwed up. I flashed this a little bit quicker because I don't think we covered it for a couple more slides. Because I remember doing this. I was supposed to fix it, but I didn't.
Oh,
So
all right.
you can talk about it. You can show them here and then talk about it later too.
Ooh, now you're really wondering. It's a little teaser. Supply chain management. So, we're actually seeing a lot more of this now where suppliers are being asked for that, not just third-party risk, but supply chain. So they're looking at very similar, but yeah. So when you're looking at this for supply chain, do you have a contract in place? If you say we're going to fail over to this other location for our users, what are they going to work on? Do you have a contract in place for workstations, for network gear, for servers, for all those things? So it's a really important piece to keep in mind.
Yeah. Fuel for your generator.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That
A
runs
little
out.
bit important.
Yeah.
Telecom management, what are we doing for our connectivity, phones or network? So we can run a generator, that's fine. We just need to have a strategy around it. There you go. Utilities, so what are we doing around all of our utilities? Usually, during a disaster, electricity is really the only one you can have some sort of a plan in place. You can have a generator, you can have a UPS. The gas goes out, the water goes out. What are you going to do? You can't have a redundant or a backup system for that typically. So just understanding that, what does that mean for your organization? And then, going through the recovery options, we'll talk about that. You're right, I do see that next in the next couple slides. So, maximum tolerable downtime, cold site could be reasonable, but we'll talk about why. So redundant sites, real time, right? We've got exact duplicates of production and at the redundant site. So if production is down, we don't lose anything. It is.
Yeah, you'd see this in banks.
Yep. Yeah.
Like US Bank has their main in St. Paul and has a live real-time site, I think in Oregon. So those are running all the time.
Yep. Yes. That's what we do. Basically.
Expensive. But
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But when you do the business impact analysis, it's more expensive to be down for X amount of time. It justifies it. So.
You know where surprisingly you don't find this enough is in utilities themselves. Like power companies, typically they'll have a computer that's running.
They have a SCADA system.
Yeah,
that
and
runs
they don't have
everything.
redundancy in the SCADA system. So you go and you do an assessment and say, man, this SCADA system is really vulnerable. You need to patch it. They can't.
Yeah. I'd love to, but
if I patch it, I'm going to take it down and, all of Maple Grove is going to lose power. It's like, why the hell would you ever design that? So they didn't do this right. You should have those redundant systems so that you can, so that's another reason for having redundant systems is I can fail over, patch one, and not affect production. Well, you know what I mean? And-
Yeah, bring it back up and then patch the other one.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree. So for the exam, redundant site, real time, most expensive. Those are the key phrases to know. Hot site, so hot site, hot hour, right? It's not gonna be real time, but it's gonna be really, really fast. It's already got the data floor, everything is already running, but you might have to flip some switches to actually bring it up into production.
Yeah, that's usually it, just flipping switches. The data's there, everything's ready.
Yep. Next, a warm site. So warm site is 1 to 3 days. You might have a lot of the stuff there, but right, you already got all the electricity, all the utilities. You might have the systems there, but you actually have to recover from tape or recover from backup. But all the hardware is there, it's ready to go. You just have to actually configure it to bring it up. So warm site is days. And then a cold site, least expensive, right? You're looking weeks. It is a location. I've got the location identified, but I have to order the hardware. I have to get everything up and delivered and recovered, configured and brought up. Yeah. So you will need to know the difference in those different types of recovery sites. Reciprocal agreement, this is another one. So this could be between two organizations. It's the cheapest,
I hate these things.
but yeah, I was gonna say,
When
it would be like, hey,
when crap hits the fan, you know, and Johnny promised to let me use his data center. Johnny doesn't want to.
right, or Johnny's having his own disaster at the time, guess
Right.
what? You're out of luck because you're not the priorities.
Yeah.
But agreement where two organizations will share resources if there's a
You
disaster.
see these a lot in printing.
Yeah,
Because those printing presses are so damn expensive. So if one printer
Yeah.
has an outage, they'll shift production over to another through an agreement like this typically.
yeah, that's probably not as bad, but the other one you'll see it is maybe not so much like with a data center piece, but hey, if you have a disaster, we have 50 cubes that you could use. We'll segment off a network. If we have a disaster, we need to relocate users. You have space for us to work in.
Yep.
Mobile sites of the data center on wheels. Yeah, it's literally a mobile data center. It's got everything self-contained in a trailer.
You know, pull right out in your
Yeah.
parking lot. And
They're actually really cool.
yeah, and who's the biggest supplier of that? SunGard? Are they still
Probably.
the biggest supplier?
Although the Amazon, it's not a mobile site, but Amazon's truck when you're gonna migrate to the cloud, it's really cool too.
Is
But yeah, the data center on wheels, so it's gonna have all the climate controls in place, fire suppression, racks in it, everything come in, tie into your power, your generator and your network, and you're up and running.
Yeah, the only concern I'd be with on this is just over subscription.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if they have more customers than they have trucks, and the disaster is widespread enough and they can't,
Yeah, they have.
they'll,
If I
if you
remember-
ask those questions, I'll give you answers on
So
that.
we used SunGuard. We didn't use the mobile side, but we used SunGuard, and it was geolocation. So they have 4 or 5, I guess, geographic locations, and they'll allocate the resource to one person in each region. So you're sharing it with 5 people, but what's the odds of Minnesota and Florida having a disaster at the same time, or Minnesota and Boston and Florida and Phoenix and Washington, Oregon or something, right? So you just have to understand what that is, because yeah, exactly, they will oversubscribe it, but they do a pretty good job around only one per geographic
The thing
location.
that sucks about recovery plans is like, what recourse do I have if you don't? If I'm out of business, I'm not gonna be able to probably do much
Yeah,
in terms of recourse.
yeah. Subscription services, so
IBM
Yeah.
sells a lot of these.
yeah. Simple insurance model. Yeah, there you go. It even says IBM has built profit off of this. So get some BCP DR insurance, some sort of subscription services.
And some of them, they'll do everything for you. They'll do the
Yeah.
disaster recovery plan for you. They'll do everything. So basically you pay them.
SunGuard
you
does
pay-
that too.
Yeah, you pay them enough money and they'll handle everything. And if you want,
Yeah, it's a,
that makes me nervous.
yeah, I'm with you. All right, so underneath your related plans, under BCP would include your disaster recovery, the continuity of operations. How are we gonna continue operating during a disaster? Resumption recovery plan. I don't think I've ever seen one of those in real life. It's always tied into something else. Continuity of support, same thing. Incident response plan, yes. Occupant emergency plan, you'll need to have that. And then a crisis management plan. I don't know if I've ever seen one of those.
Well, usually, sometimes they call it crisis communication plan.
Yeah,
but usually.
it's usually part, I've always seen it as part of a business continuity, but
Yeah.
technically it should be its own thing. It's the same thing. There we go. And here's what they are.
More fuzzy stuff.
Can't read it.
No.
Yeah, I think, oh, we'll talk through them. Hang on.
That's all the plans you talked about, yeah.
Yeah, that was your cheat sheet for having everything on one page. Now we'll talk through them. Continuity of operations, maintaining operations during the disaster. That's what it's about. So how are we moving people around? Where are they going? And how are we operating at that site? Boom. Business recovery, business resumption plan. How do we restore and come back up at typically at the, or it should be at the original site, right? So you're gonna say, all right, we're failing over to our alternative site and now we're coming back. What are the steps to go that one way? And then what are the steps to come back? What does all that involve? Yeah, appendix to the business continuity plan. Continuity of support, how is IT gonna continue supporting during a disaster? Do we have a new 800, is there an 800 number? How do they get phones? Is there a call center? Do we have a subscription service we fail over to if our call center is down? How do we get support and remote support and all that stuff? Incident response plan, so how do we respond to cyber events? So typically your malware, ransomware, breaches, those types of things. Occupant emergency plan. So,
This is all about
man,
safety.
excuse me. Yeah, human safety. How do we get people out? What list all the different disasters that could happen? It could be, you know, a big one now in the news, active shooter, tornado, hurricane, blizzard, chemical spill. What are we doing for people in those situations? How do we keep people safe? So you need to have drills around that. Yeah, the fire drill is a really good one, right? So when you're doing the fire drill, somebody's supposed to walk around. That's the warden, right? Yeah, safety warden walks around, makes sure during a drill that everybody is evacuated, and then you have the
Meetings.
the meeting point leader. They're responsible for taking attendance and making sure everybody who's supposed to be there is there.
Is that on there?
Yeah, it's on the last page, last bullet there.
Oh.
Look at that. We know stuff,
Do we,
not anything
have
specific,
we
but
done
just stuff.
we haven't done a fire drill.
I know it's on our list.
Okay.
That's good. Wait, are we recorded? Is Kevin gonna hear this?
No,
I'm
I
just
mean, we should do it.
I know. It's because I'm doing it now.
I know.
We're on it.
We're busy.
We're getting there.
Besides, look, there's gonna be a fire.
There's no emergency lighting
I'm
because
so-
there's windows everywhere.
I'm so good with fire. Play with it all the time.
In his office. Crisis management. So crisis communications. How are we gonna communicate? Who can do what? Who can say what? Who's coming up with the message? And then again, life and safety of personnel and property immediately protected. How do we communicate to our staff and to the external people, not the public? Having a call tree is important. So who's calling what, right? One person can't call everybody in the organization. If there's an emergency, you're calling the management. Well, there you go. somebody's declaring the emergency, declaring a disaster, what's the communication plan? Who contacts who? How do we verify those people have been contacted? You can have automated call trees, systems or services that'll offer that. It's really cool. Then you can, that press 1 to acknowledge receipt. That way you can track that they got it. So those are nice. Those are way easier than doing it. We had to do that. We would do call trees, and it would be, it's going to happen this week at some point, and we had a 30-minute response time. So we would get the call, and you'd have to send an email with whatever the code word was that
No, that was your test?
the high-level manager, whoever declared the test, they would just pick a random time during the week, after hours, whatever, and it's almost like a game of telephone. Hey, reply with whatever.
Yeah. Huh.
And then you'd have to email that the whoever declared it.
I guess you don't know if it really works unless you test it.
How else yeah. And that way you have accountability too. So, and then you could see who didn't respond in time. Right? And as a manager, I had to say, okay, call these people at this time, talk to them, voicemail, no answer, and email that back up. The automated piece, way easier,
Oh, yeah.
but you got to test it.
I don't know why anybody would do a manual calling tree anymore.
No, this was a long time ago.
Right.
We're old.
We are.
So-
Tired too.
Automated takes care of all that. It automatically triggers it. You can track that they've actually acknowledged it, and they can't deny they can get it.
Non-repudiation.
Yeah. Emergency Operations Center. So where are we basing our operations out of when there's a disaster?
Brad's house.
I got a basement.
It does. This is a nice neighborhood. It's good. Pizza's not that far away.
No, really good pizza.
Right.
It's the important thing. I got a smoker. Smoker and pizza. We're
I'm
done.
declaring an emergency right now.
Vital records. So understand this is that last bullet point is really the important part, right? So if you see those things, what is included in it needs to be offsite and that is accessible and you can actually get access to during a disaster. So if you have an encrypted form and don't have a key for it, doesn't do you a whole lot of good.
Yeah, checks is a big one to have here. You have to have some way to pay people.
Pay people. So that's the other, do we talk about that?
I don't know.
Succession planning is next. In the test, what are one of the first things that needs to come back up? Payroll. People aren't going to work, you're not paying them. So in a disaster, being able to pay your employees is going to be a top priority. Something to keep in mind for the exam. Yay! You didn't talk about ISACA. I saved time for you.
Oh, was I covered about it?
Yeah, that was your first slide.
Oh, not that exciting. Did security stuff.
There you go. All right, so we made it. I think these classes, we talked about this on Monday. As we start going through this now, it gets a little bit easier because these are things that people are familiar with.
Yeah, and you're on a vibe and you can start to see those connections now, right? I mean, I think in tonight's class, we showed like 5 or 6 different connections of, hey, your DRP needs to be married to your change control and you can't do DRP unless you have asset management. So you can see how all these systems and things with information security all work together for one, that stuff you weren't able to do in the first couple classes because we didn't talk about that stuff. So I think that's what also makes it easier to do these classes. Plus you're kind of in a rhythm now, And it'll get, how many more classes do we have left? 2, 3?
3.
They're all pretty useful stuff.
Well, the next 2 next week will be out of the book. We'll finish the book on Wednesday, or you will, I won't be here.
Mhm.
And then the 29th will be basically just going
Practice.
through questions.
And barbecue.
Yeah, we'll do barbecue.
Yes. Yes.
Wings are probably the best thing.
Yeah.
We can do like 10
Just
pounds.
meat, any kind of meat is fine. Find a raccoon out here or something? I don't know.
So wings, good with everyone?
What's it? You guys don't want a raccoon? Fine, more
I
raccoon.
think we
for
can
me.
do, we can do like 10 pounds of wings on each of our smokers.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we can do.
Maybe more. Maybe, ooh, I'd be able to do more.
I've never
I've
done
got two
double
grills.
deck.
I've got a second one and it's short enough, you could probably do wings.
I like it. I like it. All right, so yeah, catch up on reading. We've got, it's gonna be crappy weather this weekend.
Yeah.
So perfect time to read.
3+ inches of rain over the next week.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a good night. Thanks for covering.
So Evan,